Get mantra and meditation MP3s at JasonGallant.ca. So I just had a question in the comments about leaving toxic situations. And it's pretty common on the spiritual path that as you do your exercises, do your mantra, do your meditation, do your practices to realize a greater harmony within, that you would ultimately assume that everything externally will also be harmonious. You learn pretty quickly, though, that that is not the case. That the unconditional harmony within is not necessarily realized externally. Really what happens is that you see the great harmony at work amidst conflict. So a lot of the expectations of the ego are shattered over and over again by the enlightenment path. So I'm going to save you decades of frustration by letting you know that life isn't always harmony. Conflict, as we see with many people in today's society, is subjective. You may see harmony externally or conflict. Two different people will see totally opposite things. A lot of times it's depending on what they're used to. But what I am going to say is that through doing spiritual practice, or non-doing, you will transform. Your baseline motives, what drives you, the very existence energy that moves through you, will take you through a transformation. Your ego. Who you are never changes, but your ego does. So it only stands to reason that all of the manifestations of the previous ego will also change. If you are more unconditionally happy or fulfilled or satisfied in some deep, profound way, there are a lot of games or dramas that you may not feel compelled to take part in. And unfortunately, a lot of relationships are like that, where they're just mutual drama. Business relationships really posing as deep, meaningful relationships. Sometimes they're nothing more than abuser and abusee, or enslaver and slave. So yeah, it's normal for you to say, well, I'm done with this karma now. I don't feel like it suits me anymore. That doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you unspiritual, because if it starts raining, it's normal to pull out an umbrella. You're dealing with what is happening in this moment. And then when it stops raining, you may put the umbrella away. Well, it's the same thing with your identity. As it changes, the environment that is right for you will also change. Now, if you fight this change, if deep in your inner truth you just know, no matter how much you meditate, no matter how much you take accountability for your own perception. So say you're experiencing nothing but abuse, or you're experiencing anxiety in a situation, or fear, and you go inwards and you meditate, and you go inwards and you meditate, and you do mantra practice, and you're doing pranayama, and you're doing self-reflection. Who is this person who's experiencing this suffering? And no matter what you do, when you enter into the same situation over and over again, it's always the same. It always feels like abuse, like no matter what you do, maybe that situation is not right for you at this time, or maybe it never will be. But one thing's for sure, if you do the same thing over and over again, as the saying goes, you can't expect a different result. Something has to change. Something internally or something externally. And a lot of times, both are needed in order for you to ground your realization. So don't be surprised if you start making new decisions in your life. You start making new relationships or discarding relationships which no longer serve this inner truth that you realize. It doesn't mean this is dominated by hate. It doesn't mean that it's dominated by some sort of negativity. It just means that you're becoming wiser in what is right for you. This is called growth. If you look back on your life, you'll see many relationships that no longer serve you that were great at the time. But perhaps it's time to be in new relationship or in new environments. But it is common for spiritual aspirants to suppress their own evolution. They're looking back over their shoulder and saying, I'm supposed to be the person I was when I was 6 years old. I'm supposed to still hang out with Johnny, what's his name, that lived behind me. Even though Johnny has chosen a totally different lifestyle choice, and maybe it's pretty bad. Maybe it's a good thing you're not around Johnny anymore. Maybe Johnny's got access to weapons and he likes to fire them at you. Who knows, right? But this also happens on many other subtler levels. It's okay for you, if especially you're taking responsibility for your own projections. And I have seen this. I have seen this where people just project their own suffering on everything. They go into one situation, they're like, oh, that person's got bad energy. They go on that person's got bad energy. That situation, that person's got bad energy. Everywhere they go, the trees, they've got bad energy. The mountains, they've got bad energy. The rocks, I don't like the way that rock's looking at me, right? It's like everywhere they go, everything's got bad energy. Well, in that case, I will say, they have to go inwards and let go of their own perception, because their perception is not telling them the truth. But as you ground your freedom, as you experience deeper levels of unconditional freedom within, you will start to see where it's a natural movement of the soul or the self to match that freedom with higher and higher levels of manifestation on this physical level. Where you're like, this just clicks right. Like a key in a lock. This is more right for me at this time. That is not necessarily so right. It's not wrong, but it's just not matching my vibration. There are many people on this planet, many beings. Not all of them are at the same level of evolution. So instead of one being trying to force the other being into the exact same form of evolution, sometimes it's time to move into what is right for you. And only through deep introspection and surrender to what is will you start to follow that flow. So long story short, if you go into a situation or have been in a situation that feels abusive or negative, and no matter what you do, spiritually speaking or physically speaking, you cannot alleviate this sensation or physical experiences, then yes, perhaps it is time that you leave that situation. Perhaps the universe is saying, hey, I'm making this totally obvious to you that this is not the right situation for you, and it's time to move on. The important thing is not to judge yourself as you conduct your own experiment and find out what is right for your new manifestation, for your new expression in this world. Because in the end, we're all just children. We're just kids trying to do our best. Some of us are just wrong perpetually, but we're trying our best, right? That's all you can do. There will be no punishment for making mistakes. There's just causes and effects. And yeah, sometimes you make a certain decision and some people don't like you for it, but hey, you've done your best to follow the deepest truth that you know in that moment. And that is the most sacred thing. That's the most sacred thing you can do, is to follow what you really feel to be true in that moment to the best of your ability. And yes, expect that to evolve. But at least you honored it now. You've made truth the most sacred thing to you, instead of idealism or judgment. What you should be or what you shouldn't be. This is the greatest advice I can give you. God is truth and truth is God. That's it. The natural state of you. So I hope this helps you on your spiritual journey. Take care for now. Are you interested in working with a spiritual teacher in a formal setting? Well, perhaps the Wisdom Life School is for you. If you're interested in checking out what the Wisdom Life School is all about, just go to aratima.com.